Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of my creative writing series, my process, whatever you want to call it. I think I keep changing the name of it as I go. But I wanted to get this out there. There's several people that are actually following it, telling me that it helps them, and that's the whole point, is that we don't have to rely on the crap writing that Hollywood and media are giving us. We can do it ourselves, and we can share that with people and people that actually appreciate it. So today we're going to go over description, character and scene description. Now, there's about four characters in here. I haven't decided whether I want to keep Pater in there. The more I think about it, I don't know. Having Pater in there and what I thinking will happen with him. The Pater is the old man who's driving a wagon like a farmer going to market, and but having him in there is kind of a character development moment, I'm thinking, where, Loader cons the man into letting him ride and then ends up cutting his throat and taking his cart and horses uh, without thought, without any remorse whatsoever. Um, but I think that the overall story will have much greater impact if we don't have Pater and he just Loader just wakes up in the middle of nowhere without anybody to ask or talk to, uh, and all he sees is this castle in the distance. In fact, I'm thinking we might want to, instead of having it fields and grasslands in all direction, maybe black sand and something really dark, something like he's in another world, kind of thing. And we can try and show his characterization in more subtle ways later. But as I said earlier in an earlier episode, Viet Loader, this story is from his point of view. So we want the description of Loader to be vague, because it's coming from him. And the way people see themselves is not the way others see them. Okay? So let's do Viet Loader. And as you can tell, this thing, when you're working on these kind of things, they evolve as you go. You've got to throw things out you thought were a good idea because they're not. One of the other things about Pater is that we would have to explain where everybody is. The problem with that is that if Loader says where he's from, and either the farmer doesn't know anything about where that is, or it's so far away as to be stupid, then it kind of breaks the story, right? We want to leave how he got there kind of a mystery. He killed a guy, stole his purse, went to the tavern, got smashed, fell asleep in a gutter, and woke up in this deserted area. And so he has no choice but to go to the castle. I think that's a much better way to do it, but I'm going to go ahead and put Pater's description in here and how I thought it might work. So Viet Loader, he was, as we said earlier, a former aristocrat. And I don't think we need to go into much more of that because we're going to find out, I think, that everything's tied together, as it should be. So he's about middle-aged because he would have been a lord of his own manor, maybe hair starting to gray, but we want to make sure that we understand that he is innocuous. I don't know how that's spelled. I don't type it very often. Here we go. Innocuous in size and stature, which means if he didn't, if you, he doesn't stand out. Is average, so average. People rarely notice him. Okay. Now, his eyes, I think, are sharp. And we see his cunning. Now, we want to make sure that that we keep all of our notes because these are going to be important throughout the whole story. You know, we can't start out the story, and this is a common a common uh, metaphor where you know, just a common example is you start out the story with somebody's eyes being blue, and at the end of the story they're green or brown or something. Uh, we 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 have to have consistency, otherwise you end up with the Last Jedi, right? So um, this is all I'm going to say about him. Now that in the course of writing, this may evolve, it may devolve. We may not even mention his eyes. We need to portray that this guy is really smart. And though he's really smart, he uses that in order to take advantage of people, to murder, to take what he wants. He doesn't believe in morals. He believes morals are made up by the weak. And that's one of those common themes among bad guys. The Sith are that way, evil wizards are that way, and it's kind of a trope. Whereas, you know, who says that everybody should be equal? I think in Darth Bane, in the second book, he says um, equality is a lie. There will always be people above others. It's just human nature. I mean, we respect people above others. People are more successful than others. There is never going to be true equality. And that's a lesson I think a lot of people have never grasped. Yes, you have the potential to be anything you want, but our decisions have consequences, right? And we need to show that here. He was a petty, mean-spirited aristocrat. So when the time came and an invading army overthrew them, the people wouldn't refused him back whenever that army left. You know, so and the way he got around was that he was innocuous. People didn't remember him. They remember his name, but you know, he probably didn't go by that. Now that's not going to be, that's kind of backstory. Every story has a lot of backstory that you don't include. In my novels, I have probably as much written material about with notes on things that the reader's never going to understand or know. Some people like they did with Wheel of Time and they did with Game of Thrones will organize their notes and put them in a art book or something of that nature, right? Star Wars does it all the time, as we've seen recently with the release of their information. So that's Viet Loader. Let's move on, and we're going to talk about. I had hoped this video was going to be short, but we're already at 8 minutes. So let's talk about Pater. Whether I use him or not, we still have notes on him. He's an older farmer, right? He appears to be simple and doesn't trust. Um, he is heavy set, as you would expect a farmer to be, uh, and he has steel gray hair. This is just what I see in my mind. Kind of wild beard, also gray, and a pockmarked face. And the reason I put that in there is because these are farmers out in the middle of nowhere. You know, they don't take good hygienical care of themselves, right? That's one of the things people don't know about fantasy is that when do these guys take baths? You know, the medieval world was a very stinky place. I read a novel once, I believe it was one of the Iron Druid Chronicles, where they said, you know, one of the characters grew up in the Iron Age, early Iron Age, near the Bronze Age, and he said the entire continent of Europe smelled like shit because there were no sewers, everything was muddy, there was nothing paved. If you lived in a town or village, everything smelled like shit all the time. So that's something that, we kind of fantasize. And one of the ways that fantasy and Game of Thrones started this is becoming more realistic. Like, what would it actually have been like? Okay. So that's all I really think about Pater. And like I said, whether we use him or not, we still have to have notes for him, correct? So let me scroll down so that we capture this in the video. And let's talk about the Blacknut. I'm not sure if he's actually going to appear, but he is, as we said, the consort of the antagonist, Solana, right? Um, we probably won't see much of, hold on, maybe just reference or a moment in the end. But just like Peter, we need to have the notes in case we want to evolve our story or adapt it into a novella or something of that nature, right? Uh, is referred to as the Dark Knight or the Night, right? I think that's a good idea. Kind of play on the words and the spellings. Um, of course, if English is not your first language, it's kind of stupid, but there we go. His steel armor hides his uh, features, like his face and such as that, but his helm appears in the shape of a black dragon, its wings flaring out from the sides. Right? So that's Mordoth. Right. So what I do with all my writing is I have it on a flash drive, I have it on my SSD on my hard drive, and then I have it on a backup drive that's on the network. So all my writing is saved in three locations, always. Never fail, because something's going to happen in 20 years from now, and I'm going to want these notes for some reason. So I need to have them. And that's a very important thing you need to think about. I also email them to myself because, short of losing my email, I can go back in history forever and find these notes if I save them properly in my email, so long as I always have access to it. Um, let's talk about our last character, the main antagonist. Now, the reason that we're going to be much more detailed with Solana, is that she is the reason for the entire story. Um, we'll get into that when we talk about plot here in a little bit, where I want this to go. Whether it goes that way or not, we'll see depending on the characters. So, Solana is the Queen of Night. The she is the whole output of She Walks in Beauty. She walks in beauty like the night. She's dark and beautiful and mesmerizing, correct? So let me think about how I want to say this. Um, and you can be as prosaic, meaning that your description here may end up being good enough to just tweak a bit and put in your story, or it can be just like some of these others where it's kind of vague. But Solana is probably, other than Loader, the most important person in this, that we want to make sure that we're very detailed, because the whole point is he gets drawn into her. She's going to make him do things against his will without him even knowing it. Because she's powerful, she's supernatural. She doesn't even have to try. So let's let me type this. Think faster this way. Scroll up here so y'all can see it a little better. Very deep. Eyes were. I don't know if you remember, but I told you in a previous episode that ideas come from everywhere. All right? I read about a condition where people's eyes would, if they went into convulsions or they had a seizure or just hitting the head too hard, the blood vessels in their eyes rupture and it turns the whites of their eyes completely red. And after it dries, it looks like they have no whites, that their entire eye is black, both of them. Normally, this is accompanied by physical bruising on the face, but this is how I think I'm going to try and describe it. Uh, the blood dry. Her gown was dark as midnight, but there was a draw. How about that? Okay. Her pale skin contradicted nightly. All right, so let me reread this for you. Solana, stunningly beautiful, literally taking Loder's breath away. Her dark night black hair ran in waves down her shoulders and back. Her deep eyes were completely black, as if someone had burst all the blood vessels there and left the blood to dry. Her gown was dark as midnight, but there was a pull, a draw from her, a supernatural force that shut Loder's brain down. Her pale skin contradicted the nightly beauty that Loder beheld, but her power radiated from her and ensnared the man. That's as detailed as you need to get. You want the reader to be able to see the person they want in their mind's eye. You know, this is where the practice of reading a novel, especially, I mean, I'll give you an example. I believe tomorrow on Ryan Kennel's channel, RK Outpost, please go check it out. I'll link it in the description below. We're doing the Darth Bane book club, and I believe we're doing the second book, which is the Rule of Two. And that's one of the things that always get brought up. If they were to make a movie of this book, who would you choose to play the character? There's always different responses, and there's always arguments, and we're fans. We do that. I mean, uh, I remember in the 80s there was this big trope where the Star Trek fandom and the Star Wars fandom were battling out with each other. That was used in several movies, Fanboys being one of them. And so you want that to be, you want to give enough descriptions so that the of people, so that the reader, the person you're trying to get to like your work, can make that up in their mind, that has the imagination. If we just give it to you, you might as well write a script and cast somebody, right? So the other side of that though is that you want the scene, the setting, to be just as beautiful. And I think we're going to stop here, and we're going to take this and we're going to do the description of setting next time. I'm going to name this video probably character description, right? These are all things that we have to have in our mind as we go forward. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please share it out. And if you haven't, please subscribe uh, and hit that like button. Also, I am upgrading everything in my office, my computer, my monitors, my tools, everything. So if you look, there should be a link uh, on my main page to tip via Patreon or not, to join my Patreon. I haven't set it up completely yet, and also a PayPal tip button um, until I get monetized. Don't feel obligated at all, and I appreciate you watching no matter what you do. And as the outro says, you're the writer of your own story. Make it a great one. Have a nice day and a great weekend. Thank you. Hey, this is Storyman-Jack. I just wanted to say thank you for watching. I appreciate everybody who tunes in, and look forward to seeing you next time. Please, if you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe. And remember, you're the creator and writer of your own story. Make it a great one. Thank you.